continuing the journey. You've just joined John talking to admissions directors about the path in applying to business school. And of course, all of that hard work then leads to the experience, and embedded in that, the career journey that you're going to take, both the personal and professional next steps. And personally at CentreCourt, I find that these sessions are incredibly illuminating, the doors that these wonderful teams at the different schools are opening. So we'll find out just how hot the US job market is. And to discuss that, it's a pleasure to welcome Holly Lawrence. Holly is the Assistant Dean, the Office of Career Success. And I've always admired at UMass Isenberg the emphasis, Holly, that you place on success with individuals' careers. You'll be telling us a lot more about that. We've got Fred Burke. Fred is the Director of Graduate Career Management Center at the Zicklin School at Baruch College. Great to have you with us as well, Fred. And Courtney Giese, who's joining us from Case Western and the Weatherhead School. So thank you all. I talked about sort of a hot US job market. Perhaps before we jump into the secret source of career services and all of the guidance, the mirror that you hold up to these candidates, perhaps just a few words. Holly, a buoyant job market at the moment?
Yes, it's looking really great for our students. I was saying earlier, we don't have all of our 22 data in yet, but certainly we see a continuation from what we saw in 21, which was really great salaries and great employers. So we're expecting that to continue.
Right, because I suppose, Fred, people are thinking, well, the opportunity cost heading to business school, and yet what you're seeing and the graduates at Zicklin, there are even more doors that they're opening, greater levels of responsibility. What are you seeing at Baruch?
All of the above. I think that we are in a great job market, particularly for the recent graduates, even on the MS MBA level. A good chunk of students come back for the MBA to move up in their career, and also a lot of our students come back to use their MBA to change careers, and we're having success across the board. To what Holly said, great salaries, great signing bonuses. We collect data at time of graduation in May, and we're in our 3-month follow-up window for the US News rankings, and all that data looks really good. We've even had a couple of students receive offers earlier than the past, so that's good, really good for our numbers.
Great, that's good to hear. And Fred mentions the idea of change, Courtney. That must be something that you see a lot. Individuals that have enjoyed the first 3, 4, 5 years of their career, but the MBA is then perhaps enabling a pivot and taking another direction.
Yeah, definitely. We have, a lot of our students who have 2 to 7 years of job experience in one industry and are looking to come to business school to be able to either refine where they're already at or to pivot to a new industry or function. And so, we see that a lot with our students, and, kind of echoing what everyone has said so far, the job market has looked really well for this past 2022 graduating class, and we're kind of seeing the same things in our placement numbers. So it's all great news on that front.
So my theory, you all 3 schools, you have very talented and engaged faculty. You might remember your strategy professor, perhaps the finance professor, and then you're trying to forget that accounting exam that you took at the end of the first term. But nobody forgets your career services team, because the journey and that sort of path that you're accompanying them with. So, Holly, I'd love if we could capture some of that during this panel, starting with what's involved. Who are the individuals in your team that then providing the sort of coaching, mentoring, and guidance for next steps in these students' careers?
Absolutely. So we have a pretty robust and extensive curriculum for our full-time MBAs, and it begins when they walk in the door a few days before the start of the semester with our orientation. It's a intense set of workshops and one-to-one coaching, and then ends with a banquet, an alumni panel we call Keys to Success. During those 3 days, we have workshops that are really intense on things like LinkedIn profiles, behavioral interview practice, team building, improv. So a lot of stuff that they're doing in small groups, and then we carry it into one-to-one into the semester. But the other thing that we do in orientation, we don't call it outright life design. I don't know how many people know what life design is, but it's the application of design thinking theory and framework to solving this tough problem we call what to do with your life. And so it's an opportunity for students to do a little reflective work that I typically lead as a workshop with them, where they think about why they chose to come to an MBA program, what they hope to get out of it, who might help them along the way, what some of their influences are, how they help each other as a cohort. And then we move into another exercise where we ask them to think through what their view of work is and their view of being a person in the world. And the idea is that they are aligning what they want out of their professional path with what's important to them in their personal lives, their personal values and beliefs. So that kind of sets them up for what happens in the rest of the 2 years, which is more workshops and lots of one-to-one executive coaching.
Right. Well, now that I've got a term for it, my career has been fairly joyfully chaotic. I'm going to apply life design. It was all intended. We were saying earlier, Holly had commented, Fred, that this is some of the most rewarding work that she's ever done. In terms of your team, that they're perhaps challenging preconceived ideas of next steps of career, getting people to sort of really think deeply about who they are, what they want from life. So, who are you looking for in the team and the sort of support they're then providing?
Yeah, I think what we've all learned from the pandemic is we're constantly pivoting and constantly changing. So I think innovation is really important. I think flexibility is really important, and the willingness to learn, because we're constantly rewriting the rules as we go. I mean, even this semester, we're trying to do in-person events. We're finding days before an in-person event, the organizations will say, we really just don't feel safe coming to the gymnasium on Friday. And here we are on Tuesday planning a big event, and we have to quickly pivot in 3 days to get that all remote. But I think Holly mentioned a couple of things that are really important. I know at Zicklin, we interview all the full-time MBA students with the graduate admissions office. So the career advising office has a weigh-in on the applicants that we admit to the full-time MBA program. And whoever the career advisor is that's part of the interview is assigned to be the career coach for that student for the 2 years in the MBA. We flipped this model about 8 years ago, and it's been really good to assign everybody in the full-time MBA program a personalized career advisor. And we look at that as almost like executive coaching through the 2 years through the program, whether it's life coaching, executive coaching, career coaching. There's a point of contact to kind of work through some of those questions that Holly mentioned, which are important. I know during orientation, we've been doing the Gallup Strength Finder and the MBTI as part of orientation to kind of help people focus on why they're here for the MBA, what are their skills, values, and interests. I'm pursuing this degree. What's it going to look like? Am I going to be moving up? Am I going to go back to my current employer? Am I going to be pivoting careers? And I think we all want to be at the penthouse in New York and be at the top. And we have to build up layers of that house. And I think it's good to get the group together to kind of figure out why we're all here and answer some of those questions. So then we can then fuse the career readiness and some of the life skills and coaching skills. So students are really articulating how their MBA, how their education, and how their skills align with what they're going to pursue. And I think everybody wants the quick results. And I think career services really has been really good about taking ownership of there's a process here. There's a skills, values, and interest part. How do we use this as a layer to begin thinking about how one would pursue their career? And how do you own that process and then have good outcomes and good results?
Right. If I was taking a class on, I don't know, discounted cash flow, perhaps I might be surrounded by 50, 60, 80 people in that amphitheater. But Courtney, what all of you are providing and at Weatherhead, the sort of career development, I mean, it's deeply personal. It always strikes me, there's so much one-on-one that you provide. To talk us a little bit about through some of the different options that your students have.
Yeah, I'd love to. We have a little bit of a more intimate sized cohort, which allows us to really get to know each of the students personally, understand their backgrounds, and be able to advocate to that with our employer partners. We also do a lot of one-on-one coaching with them as well. It starts with our intake meetings over the summer, where we meet with each student individually prior to joining the program and talk with them about, their overarching career goals, with the understanding that they'll be exploring during the program, and they could end up going down a different path than what they initially set into. But we get that first introduction with them, and then through the orientation process, similar to Holly said, we do lots of different workshops on getting them ready for the MBA program. We We actually introduce them to some of our employer partners during that orientation process, so they can get kind of a first look at what they'll be, experiencing during the program through different events. And, as I mentioned, with that really individualized attention, we get to know the students really well, understand what they want, so that when we're talking with our employer partners, we can help facilitate those connections between the employers and the students. And we do, a lot of one-on-one coaching throughout the year. We're always available for, questions on career strategy, resume and cover letter review, mock interviews, kind of all those things. But in addition to that individualized approach, we actually piloted this year a 1 credit hour career class built into their first semester. So that's, in addition to other, organizational behavioral classes that they'll get, that's kind of a first step of, exploring different industries, different roles, kind of taking a look inward at what they want to do, and how we can connect them to different alumni and things that might be good resources for them. So yeah, we with a smaller cohort, we really do get that chance to kind of work with them one-on-one and individually in that way.
Right. Given that you're on first name basis with everyone, I can imagine all three of you, your notification page on LinkedIn must be insane with updates of, oh, this is what they're now doing 5 years out, 10 years out. Look at such great achievements. I mean, Holly, you mentioned working with them even before they'll take their first classes in the core curriculum. What are the tools that you use? Presumably, if they come in with an idea what they want to do in finance, I want to become a product manager in big tech. Many will have had ideas that they've shared with the admissions office. So how do you sort of lay out all those cards and start to explore those paths, but perhaps other opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like Fred and Courtney have talked about, some of it is done through the one-to-one coaching and our executive career coaching, but really back to this idea of where we start in the life design questions, it really pushes people to think carefully about what it is they thought they wanted to do and came to get an MBA, what they thought they were doing it for, and sort of where they might be now. And it's really interesting because if you step back and you just do a show of hands or talk to people privately, if they're not comfortable raising their hand, they're all over the map. It's a pretty big spectrum of folks who, yes, this is exactly what I want to do, and no, I'm not entirely sure what I want to do. I just know I need to make a change, and the MBA is the right direction for me. Either way, we encourage exploration. So in addition to the coaching and some of our workshops, part of this life design model includes the idea of prototyping. And so we start early, encouraging our students to take small steps toward big goals. That's the way I think of it. And those are things like informational interviews, going to info sessions that are provided by employers, or engaging with our alumni. Our alumni network is really strong and people are so approachable. And so they are available to talk about opportunities, shadowing somebody at a job, doing a company tour, or doing a micro internship, a project-based internship, something so that there is a smaller investment in case it doesn't quite work out. So you're testing it, right, as the prototype idea. And if you really like it, then you might want to do the full summer internship in that same industry or functional area or organization. If you decide from the micro internship you didn't quite like it, then you might want to pivot a bit and try something else. So that's just some of what we do to help students really with that, I think, very important piece of exploration. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, this theme of exploration, Fred, and at the same time, small steps. How do you best channel that? Just so that, that they actually don't get lost in myriad choices and really get them to think in quite specific ways, both about their own skill sets, but the sort of environments where they'll really thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I want to mention, I agree with everything Holly said. We revised our curriculum 5 years ago for the MBA. We're currently doing another MBA curriculum. And I think as Courtney mentioned, listening is really important. So that means listening to faculty, but listen to employers and alumni and other stakeholders. We implemented in our last curriculum revision a business consulting class. So every MBA graduates going through this 3-credit business consulting class where they spend 1 or 2 weeks in the classroom and then 8 to 10 weeks on a project. And those projects are now global all over the world, but students get a chance to have hands-on real work consulting experience. And guess what? A lot of students get hired from the clients, which is great because the employer gets a chance to see how the student performs, just like we encourage the internship between the first and second year of the MBA. So I think that's really important to listen. So I think anywhere along the way to have exploration is really important. We also have an executive on campus program where we have a number of alumni and friends of the college that volunteer to be mentors, and you can do a short-term mentor or a long-term mentorship program to partner up with somebody who's in a career that you aspire to go with, and just have someone that's not connected to the classroom, not connected to the school, to ask all those hands-on specific questions. And it's a great way to learn, and most times those mentors open up doors for students because they're so impressed with what they see, and that little bit of polish is the added value, as you mentioned before, the magic dust that we present to students, which is great.
And understandably, your graduates, and Courtney, I'm sure no different at Case Western, think a lot about that first position coming out of the MBA. But presumably there's also an ongoing message that says, well, it's also about the second, the third position. How do you also sort of give them that wider sense of, what the building blocks for the next 5, 10, 20 years of their career?
Yeah, I think that, as we're kind of having these individual career strategy meetings and understanding the types of industries that they want to go in, we try to connect them with business leaders and alumni who can really speak to that experience personally. We have a lot of opportunities to connect students with our alumni, whether they're coming back for networking events or, like Fred mentioned, participating in mentoring programs where they work with our students. But we have a really engaged alumni base, and that's always great. They're always willing to come back and work with students and talk with them about their own experiences, about their own career path. And then we see those networking events translating into more of a mentorship role where they're, continuing these conversations after the fact with alumni to understand kind of their career growth. So we do try to, work with them on understanding, this might be your first step out of the MBA program, but what does that look like, 5, 10 years from now? And how can we connect you with people that can help you along that journey? So I know that alumni participation is a big part of what we try to encourage with our students. And, we do a lot of different events with alumni where we're bringing them on campus, but also, we can travel to see our engaged alumni as well. We're actually doing a trek in a couple of weeks to Seattle, to meet with one of our really engaged alumni who works at Amazon. So some of those students are getting, a select look at visiting these companies where our alumni work. And we're really fortunate that we have that alumni base that is willing to, not only say, yeah, I'll participate in a mentorship program, I'll come back for an event, but bring students here and have them take a look at what it looks like in practice to work at these organizations. So yeah, we really utilize our alumni group, and we're really lucky to have those engaged alumni.
This is, I'm sure, why an hour ago in John's session with your colleagues in admissions, they talked about, we love to think about what this individual will be like as an alum, because that continued support, loyalty, openness. If we go back only 3 years, Holly, to the class of 2019, the world has changed a lot. How has the program and the career support that you're then providing responded to this evolving global business landscape and the sort of skill sets, resilience, adaptability? What do you think employers are really looking for today?
Wow, that's such a big question. It includes a few different pieces. So I'll take some of those pieces. So our program has actually changed in terms of the career and professional development opportunities that we offer has changed somewhat since 2019. So we've been doing our orientation, that intense 3-day thing I was talking about earlier, for over 10 years. So that we just continue to refine and make adjustments so that it's always in step with what the world is asking of our incoming MBA students. In terms of what we offer ongoing, so my Office of Career Success is relatively new, and my faculty home is business communications, and I was made the assistant dean of this Office of Career Success because it was the marriage of business communications and our career center. And one of the things our dean charged me with doing was to offer even more support for our graduate and professional programs. So I have partnered some of our communications faculty, our business communications faculty, with our MBA students in a pretty significant way. So that's become an extra level of executive coaching. And so in terms of skill sets, I think that there is definitely resilience that is wanted, but also people are sort of trying to figure out the hybrid, remote, where they can live, but work somewhere else, and how to sort of shore all that up. So that comes back into some of the personal preference in our communications coaching. We're really trying to help people figure out what they want and then articulate it in a way that meets the needs of the prospective employer. So that's one thing that we've been working on. So we have bolstered our soft skills, so to speak, in terms of what we're offering our students. And then in technical skills, we have integrated more data analytics classes. So we have a few dual degree programs. One of them is our MBA, MSBA dual program. And so our full-time core MBAs, I'm a core MBA, so they're doing the 2-year MBA program. They can focus on an area of interest, and now they can dig in even deeper with the analytics. That's just one example of things that we have done in terms of the curriculum itself. But all of that has been a result of this change in the office that I am leading, but also in response to what's happening in the world and post-pandemic life and so on.
Right. So Holly paints a picture, Fred, that takes us through those soft skills of communication through to the hard skills of business analytics. Do you also see or get feedback from employers in terms of a mindset or behaviors that they really now want to see in a candidate that may be working remotely, and working in a very different environment than perhaps we would have known 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think the flexibility is important. And we talked earlier about listening, and I think employers are scrambling. And I know the virtual landscape is broadened the net of opportunities. And so where in 2019, there was more of an interest in coming to campus, but now I see very creative virtual engagement opportunities that students really like. And it also provides more access to everybody. And it's also a huge savings of time and money. So the virtual stuff is good. We really listen a lot to students and employers. And in fact, we do a student satisfaction survey every other year to find out how satisfied students are with our office. And we get good takeaways about timing and availability. And for the past 2 years, we saw more and more students request virtual opportunities, and if they can't make it, if it's recorded, they can listen to it on their way home, particularly if it's a working professional. We also do every semester a career interest survey to find out what our talent pipeline is. I mean, at Zicklin, we have a mission tied to the City University of New York, and our demographics change every year, what our pipeline of talent is. So it's good for our employer relations team to know who's enrolled, what our talent pipeline is, what their aspirations are, and then we can pivot accordingly. And prospective students say, well, what kind of career fairs do you have? Well, we know nationally there's been a decline in career fairs, but if we're doing alumni events, meetup, coffee chats on a really specific area, that's a better win-win for both the student and the employer. Getting a small group of students together to talk about strategy or fintech or brand management with 5 or 6 employers with 25 to 30 people in a virtual room, it's a win-win across the board. We also find that employers, they love resume books. If they have a request for a certain pipeline of talent, if we can pull together, with equal opportunity, the criteria, 20, 15, 10 resumes of people that fit that pipeline. Again, career services is the partnership. And if we're not able to deliver to the employer, they're going to go elsewhere. So we want to make sure that we're equally serving the students, but also being very responsive to the employer request. And they're in flux and we're in flux, and then trying to keep the students caught up at the same time. I feel that I've worked harder the past 3 years than I ever have, because you're constantly connected and constantly moving. But I think we talked earlier about how excited we are because knowing all this shuffling around has a good result. And when you look at the outcome data, I mean, this year, last year, and this upcoming year ahead, we're seeing phenomenal salaries, great signing bonuses. And, some people say, do I need to go get an MBA? The job market is good. Yes, but then there is that need for that leadership development, and as generations are changing and baby boomers are retiring, what's going to be that pipeline of talent, and who's in line to be groomed to move up into those higher level positions? So I think back to getting to know our students, thinking about what one's long-term career might be 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And that MBA might not have an immediate need in the next 2 to 3 years, but 5 to 10 years, having that ticket, punched, ready to go might be a huge advantage.
Right. Fred speaks about that leadership pipeline, Courtney, and often that implies soft skills. How are you in the careers team involved in sort of developing those soft skills, even from the basics of interviewing? You're taking a bunch of students to Seattle, but perhaps they could now interview across the country, given the virtual opportunities that are presented. So how do you make sure that they present as well on Zoom as they would in person?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, starts with that first semester when they're in that career class that I mentioned. The curriculum involves, it starts out kind of at the basics. Here are different interview skills, different interview styles for you to practice. We bring in lots of business leaders and alumni to help lead those sessions, to tell them, this is what employers are looking for. And then so they explore their own career journey in that way. They also take what we call a lead course in their first semester as well. It is based on research from our organizational behavioral team. And so they go through, and through that process, also they look inward and learn about, their own leadership styles and how they work in teams. But, part of that is also talking with people in their industry of interest, where it's part of their curriculum to have informational interviews with people. They get feedback on those interviews. So really it's kind of a lot of practicing those soft skills while also learning about kind of themselves and their career path. And then in addition to that, we do different workshops and things so they can practice their interviewing and soft skills in addition to their technical and analytical curriculum, so we can really help prepare them to be able to join the workforce and make those networking connections that can benefit them and help them become a more effective leader as they're looking at their next career step.
Well, with so many tools, mentoring, bringing in alums, guest speakers. You mentioned, Holly, earlier having the joint degree, the MBA and the MSBA. Maybe we should have a joint MBA and MCD where there's also a Masters of Career Development, because you're packing so much into that 2-year experience and then in the years that follow. As you think about that sort of student engagement and the skills, what do you think that employers are telling you about what they really love about Isenberg students?
Oh, yeah. I can say very quickly and easily right off the bat, we hear that they love the work ethic. So our students, I think, don't make assumptions about what they're going to walk away with. And they come in pretty hard working, ready to figure it out. And so we hear from employers that one of the things they like best about our students is their work ethic, and that they're ready to just hit the ground running and not have to take, not have to have things be just so for them. One of the things that we are also noticing, as Fred was talking about, is the idea that there are a lot of retirements, of course, and there are positions that are opening, but I think some of those positions are changing and being reconfigured because the people who have been in them may have been in them for a long time. And so the needs of the companies are changing, and the needs in the world are changing. And so they're rethinking what some of those positions are. And one of the things that works so well for our students, and I imagine Fred and Courtney's as well, is that we can prepare them for the executive leadership that they will need to take on and grow into, but also that they have developed some specialized knowledge in an industry or functional area. And so I think that's really what employers are looking for, and that's sort of the way we have been going in our approach, so that they are able to hit the ground running, and they know they have the knowledge base and the skill set to do the job, but also have a breadth and understanding that an MBA will bring them as leaders who are moving up in whatever the organization is.
Yeah, with the resume books and employers, Fred, asking for 10, 15, 20 profiles, certain skills perhaps they're looking from all of them, but something similar to what Holly was describing. Do you think employers come to Zicklin because there's something specific that they really appreciate about your students?
Yeah, I mean, I think we also have a hardworking, we're also known as having a little bit of grit because we're the city university. Our students are usually, many of them are first generation immigrant family, and that's part of the mission of the city university to provide access to education. But there's this unparalleled work ethic that we have hands down. And with that comes a sense of a huge array of diversity. On our campus, there's 160 countries representative. You'll hear many people not speaking English. And I think as the world is changing and looking at the leadership positions that have mostly been held by white men, it's important to have that pipeline of diverse talent ready to go to aspire to those higher level positions. And so many employers are even saying like they just really want to make sure that they're spending the effort to find the right talented pool of DE&I candidates. And so what student clubs do we have? How are we working with the MBA conferences? What are we doing to diversify and help them? Because I think employers, it's a value important for them. It's important for the students, but also working together to create more opportunities for a pipeline that hasn't existed before to kind of have more equity across the board.
Right. Are you seeing shifts, Courtney, in terms of industry sector position? In the last 2 years, I guess, healthcare, supply chain, some of these things we've certainly talked about, sort of big tech. Do you see differences in terms of where the recent graduating class are finding positions in the sectors they're focusing on?
Yeah, so kind of like we've talked about, our kind of profile of MBA students changes year over year as far as their industry of interest. So sometimes we'll have more from one industry than another year over year. So we really have to be flexible and adapt to that. For this past 2 years, I can speak to we've had a lot go into consulting and management consulting, a lot into healthcare and supply chain. And so exactly kind of what you said, I see an increase in a lot of that, and a lot of the positions really requiring a lot of those business analytics skills, which we incorporate into our core curriculum. And kind of how Holly was talking about, we have our areas of concentration that they can really design their second year of the program. So to really get those kind of functional skills in those specific areas, as well as dual degree programs. But yeah, a lot of our students are interested in tech and consulting, and we also have kind of a lot who are interested in healthcare, with a little bit of our healthcare hub in Cleveland with the Cleveland Clinic and university hospitals. And so we do also see a lot of healthcare, and then an increase in the need for supply chain, definitely.
Right. And at Isenberg, Holly, certain sectors that have really turned up their recruiting volume in recent years?
Yeah, I would echo some of the ones that Courtney just said. So healthcare, consulting, those are big for us. Financial services, manufacturing, technology broadly. Some of our job titles include project manager, director of operations, senior consultant, senior operations strategy analyst. So I think pretty consistent. And we see that close to 90% of our students who are seeking employment, and the majority of them are, after graduation have an offer. So you were asking earlier about the job market and the prospects, very, very strong. And those are some of the industries that seem to be most appealing to our students and then our employers.
And already Isenberg, of course, is bringing students from all over the world, but where they end up working, is there a shift, those that are then still working perhaps fairly close to the school versus others that are now interviewing with a company in Dubai or in Sao Paulo, Brazil? Have virtual interviewing opportunities meant that, that they're incredibly mobile?
Yes, absolutely. And as Fred was saying, we have a very diverse population at the MBA level for sure. It's interesting because our undergrads are largely from Massachusetts. We're a state school, and so they tend to stay in the state. So remember, we're in Amherst. It's pretty small, little rural, very beautiful, but it's not a metropolis. It's not Manhattan. And so students are typically looking outside of this immediate area. And not only because our student pool is quite diverse. The opportunities are almost endless, right? They can go anywhere because they can work remotely. They're not tied to this area. They're willing to relocate, and many want to go maybe where they're from originally, but also just to try something new at this really pivotal time in life after they've dedicated 2 years to this degree. So they're ready to strike out and really get what they want. So they're very open to opportunity and relocating.
Right. So Fred, I'm going to confer on you the wisdom that the markets do or don't believe that Jerome Powell and his team at the Fed have. Looking into the crystal ball, where do you think we're heading next? Very difficult to predict what 2023 is going to look like, but perhaps just core industries where the demand is so strong, and you see that continuing in the next 12 to 24 months?
You know, I've been working in career services for 26 years, Matt. I get this question asked so many times. If I knew the answer, I would not be sitting here on this call today. I'd be a very wealthy man sitting on some island. You know, it's really hard to say because there's been so much disruption and so much change. What's going to happen? I want to go back to something Courtney mentioned earlier. You know, at Zicklin, we have a curriculum that has 6 required classes, and the rest are electives. And I think having the opportunity for students to figure out the school has identified the core requirements, but then leaving the electives up to students to figure out how they want to spin their MBA and how they want to take classes to enhance their career. Not only does it allow students to learn new skills, it allows the students to have a talking point as they think about, you know, where they might want to go with their career. I mean, we know that there's growth in healthcare, we know there's growth in finance, but at the same time, we're discussing a recession and there's all this stuff going on with inflation. So will that bubble break like it did in 08, 09? We don't know. It could not. We're watching the numbers go back and forth. Accounting remains strong. Technology, anything in a technology field remains really strong. At the same time, we also have a lot of students that really want to do entrepreneurship and still want to take the risk and support entrepreneurship. And there's been a lot of space created for people to develop their own career and do entrepreneurship. So I don't have the clear answer for that. I think we're still mucking through a lot of things that are in constant change, and I don't know where we're going to land. I think if we do go into a recession or inflation remains the way it is, we might see some shifts. But right now, what we're seeing in job postings and internships, we can't keep up. There's so many things coming through the career services. And I think Holly and Courtney would concur that there's still a great demand for hiring. So I don't have an answer for that question that I could give. I'm not sure if Holly or Courtney would have a better response than I. But that's a tough one for me to answer.
Well, I guess, Courtney, I'd pick up on what Fred's saying, and also an earlier comment you made, Fred, about you know, the retirement of the baby boomers, you know, over the next 10 years, the sort of leadership talent pipeline that we're going to need. I mean, fundamentally, Courtney, in today's market or next year or 3 years from now, do you still feel that you're better off with an MBA from a top business school than without?
I think that, you know, and I think across the board, the benefits of having that MBA are, you know, really important because it gives you the fundamentals of, you know, how to be an effective leader, in addition to, you know, those technical and analytical skills that the students are achieving. So I think the value of that is still very important. I also think that, you know, when you're talking about, you know, choosing a school and trying to, you know, make plans for the future, that having, you know, that opportunity to really explore different industries and explore, you know, the connections of career services to different organizations that come back year over year to recruit from those schools. You know, the alumni network being willing to, you know, really be a great resource. I think that all that is something that is so valuable to the current students of, you know, having, you know, the career services professionals having these ongoing relationships with employers who come back year over year because they recognize the value of the students. You know, I feel like that in looking at your career progression and looking at your future career opportunities, that is so valuable to have those networking opportunities that are provided by the school. So overall, yeah, I think that the skills gained from the MBA program, not just in the core curriculum and, you know, the emotional intelligence and the, those kinds of skills that you gain, but also the connections that the universities provide and are able to help with and help guide you on that path.
And presumably, Holly, if we take Courtney's words and ask the class of 2002 after a dot-com bubble burst, or in 2010 and the financial crisis, do you think that their answer would be the same? I was nevertheless in a much better position navigating that uncertainty and those downturns with an MBA than without one?
I think so. I would just also like to add to some of what's happening in education, which kind of, puts a spin on things, and that is the proliferation of the specialized masters, right? And we have them, and people worry, I think, that those could cannibalize the MBA programs, but the MBA is still an important piece to it for some of the things that we've said so far today, and that is the specialized masters set students up to full steam ahead in a very focused, specific area, and they are targeting a job and an outcome for the most part, and they're doing it in rapid fire time. The MBA is much broader and has more opportunity for people to do that specialization and then prepare themselves for this bigger journey at the leadership level. And I just think that's semi-timeless, frankly. And so I would say, yes, that the students who were seeking it back then and are seeking it now are maybe doing somewhat different reasons, but ultimately the outcome is very similar. And that is strong opportunity, growth, leadership, investing in advancing one's professional future and professional self.
Right. Well, Fred, I hope that you bought a lot of stock in Twitter on Friday afternoon before Elon Musk confirmed, and we are a step closer to that private island of yours.
At the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of employers were asking students what they were doing when things were slowed down, and I think versus where we were in 2019, where we were in 08 or 01, there were so many opportunities with LinkedIn Learning and going back to schools, and everybody was offering this virtual content. So a lot of employers were saying to applicants, what are you doing during the pandemic to acquire more skills? And so whether it's the MBA, most of us were offering a virtual option, or a LinkedIn Learning class, employers wanted to see what job seekers what they were doing to diversify their talent pool, because it was so easy with all this information to acquire more skills. And I think that was a question that we saw 3 years ago that we hadn't seen before in the past.
Interesting, very interesting. It's often your colleagues in admissions that will represent the school at MBA fairs, virtual events like this. And I feel that access to your experience and the sort of wisdom and guidance that you've shared in the last 45 minutes. So I'd like to just wrap up. Perhaps it's a fairly open question to all of you. Individuals thinking about the personal investment that they're making in themselves. Next steps. Courtney, as you think about this MBA journey and the opportunities that will and outcomes that they can look forward to, how would you frame that? How would you sort of counsel anyone that's thinking at the moment, is this the right time for an MBA? What would your words of advice be?
Yeah, I think that, there's a reason why somebody is interested in receiving an MBA. And so to really think about, what impact could this give me down the road? How is this preparing me to take on these leadership positions? How is this investment in myself going to really pay off in the end? And as far as people who are joining an MBA program, my advice would just be to be open-minded, participate in different events and opportunities to learn more about different industries. Having that kind of singular focus is pretty common, and it can be helpful as you go through looking at your future career plans. But keeping an open mind, exploring different industries, a business school is a great time to explore and kind of learn about, different opportunities they might not have thought of. So that's what I would say about that.
And if we're asking a candidate, where they saw themselves in 5 years, Holly, that's not just a job title. It's perhaps who they want to be. What would your answer be?
Oh, who they want to be. I mean, that's very much at the heart of what we do. Like, it's not, it's not what you want to do. It's what you want to be. What do you want to become? And how do you want to live your life? And what kind of meaning you want to make for yourself and others through your work? What is your journey? So I hope that in 5 years out, I think you said 5 years, that they will feel like they have done something that's fulfilling and meaningful in their lives. That's the most important thing.
All right, Fred, perhaps a final word. Holly's sort of brought in the sense of purpose and meaning in our lives. What would you add to that to close?
Yeah, I would echo both Courtney and Holly's response. I think at Zicklin, Career Services goes on the road with our admissions office because students want to talk to us and ask about these options. And I think it's really important as people pursue their MBA to talk with Career Services to find out how we can help, what our role is in their success. You know, it's more than just the curriculum, it's more than the admissions process, it's the entire package. And, you know, those one-on-one conversations we can have really make or break an admissions decision. And I think it's really important that they know as coming to the school that they have this Career Services. We even say executive coaching. And sometimes those conversations have to be honest. I've talked to several students that need a year or two before they come back to Zicklin for an MBA. And people have come back and said, you know, thank you so much for waiting and giving me a year to figure this out. And then now I'm really coming in with clear ideas because, you know, we want our students to be ready to go for their MBA and have clear direction. But if they don't have enough work experience, that could hurt their salaries later on down the road. And sometimes another year of work experience gives some clarity to figure out what direction that MBA. And so as a career advisor, you want to make the best decision to help the student be most successful.
Well, let me echo what the alumni have said. Thank you, all three of you, so much, because I feel that this dialogue between our viewers from all over the world as they're thinking about this big decision and taking the next steps for their business education, to be able to hear from you, to understand how you work, the incredible opportunities that you're then opening up for these MBA students and specialized master's students. So thank you for being so generous with your time and joining us at CentreCourt. And I'm sure your colleagues in admissions will be very busy with our viewers in the coming days and weeks, following up on everything that they've heard. Thanks to all three of you.